This situation still gives me chills to this day. I live in a sketchy part of the neighborhood, but I had never had a job outside other than helping my mom. I was very naive and gullible at the time. I was fresh out of high school and looking for a job. I had worked with my mom junior to senior year cleaning houses, but I wanted to work somewhere else and gain some outside experience. When I graduated high school, my mom and I decided it was time to look for another job because I needed some money for college. My mom loved to read newspapers, and we would get a Spanish newspaper called Mundo Hispanico every week. I would look through it once in a while to read the comics or to read the job ads at the end. One evening, I was so determined to find an ad that paid well and was something else that would give me another set of work skills. I was going through the classification section at the end of the newspaper when I found what I thought would be the perfect job for me. I don't remember word for word, but it said something along the lines of, looking for young females ages 18 to 25 for an open massage position at this location. The location they gave was 0.3 miles away from where I stayed, so I thought it was perfect. I could walk to and from without having to worry about transportation, since we only had one car. The massage training would be provided, and the pay was handsomely good. Our girls earn anywhere from $500 to $900 a week. I thought, whoa, what a great wage. I can pay off my college in no time. I was so excited that I fit the profile that I showed my mom the job ad. My mom wasn't excited like I was. She had told me that it looked a little suspicious. I should call first to see if there really was another person on the other side. So I did call, and a lady answered. I asked about the free training, how much we really would make, and where the location was exactly. She seemed very sweet on the phone, and told me before we could move forward they were doing interviews. They already had other candidates on their list. She said that I could come in for an interview to see if I would make it to the second round of interviews. I agreed. She gave me the address and I looked it up. When I saw it was 0.3 miles away from my apartment, I was extremely happy. I told my mom that I would be going to the interview at a set time, at this location and alone. She told me there was no way I would be going alone, and that she would come with me. I was mad. I wanted to do this by myself without having her help me. In my little mind, I thought I was all grown up and didn't need any more help from her. The day came, and she drove us there in the only car we had. This address the lady gave me was weird, because it took us to a motel behind the shopping plaza that was next to our apartment. It didn't make sense to me why they would have an interview there, so we just circled the plaza looking for the place. My mom got frustrated and told me to just call the woman for the exact location. I did, and she told me that they were in motel room XXX, and that they were there because it was a safety precaution. It seemed to make sense to me. I told her I still couldn't find the place, so I asked if she could speak to my mother and tell her exactly where this place was. "You're with your mother?" This time her voice changed from sweet to an almost angry and panicking tone. I said yes, I'm with her right now because she's driving me. I passed the phone to my mom. She said hello 3 times or so, but the lady had already hung up on her. I called 2 more times, but she never picked up the phone. I was mad that the lady had just hung up, and so we went back home. I never put 2 and 2 together until about 3 years after. I heard on the news that there was a newspaper job ad that had been busted, and the people were charged with human trafficking. The ad was very similar to the one I had read years ago. I thanked my mom over and over, because if it wasn't for her, I could have been dead or have been trafficked multiple times. I don't know where I would have ended up at. I'm so grateful for my mom, despite me being angry at her for coming with me, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be where I am today. I'm sorry if this isn't the right sub for this. This happened yesterday, and I still can't believe it happened. I'm still pretty freaked out. I'll explain it all at the end, so I'm sorry if it gets a bit confusing as I'm telling it. I recently moved into a new flat, 3 weeks, and I'm sharing it with my sister. The only person we know properly is a single mom who lives in the apartment next door to us. Ever since we moved in, she's been giving us advice and helping us out with most things. We don't know anyone else properly yet. From what we've seen of our other neighbors, they're mostly couples in their 30s to 40s, or older guys who live alone. We're probably the youngest ones here. We're both females. I'm 18 and my sister is only 16. Today I was out with friends, and then later on I went to the gym. I then went to get my sister to go out for some food. We finally got back at around 10 p.m. The only people we saw on our way to the flat was the couple who lived next door to us. I didn't see anyone else. Me and my sister got into our pajamas and were just sitting around watching TV when suddenly our buzzer rang. I jumped up to answer it, and it turned out to be the next door neighbor, the single mom. I asked her what was up, and she said that our dad was asking for us downstairs. Straight away my stomach dropped, and I immediately asked her if she was sure he said he was our dad. The reason I asked her was just to make sure that's what she actually said. She replied that yes, he was our dad, and he was looking for us. The neighbor asked me if she could let him up to our flat, but I told her right away not to do that. I wanted to call out to my sister, but I didn't want to make her worried. I asked the neighbor to not let him come up yet, and I heard her repeat this to him. I couldn't hear anything for a few minutes, and after this I started to get really worried. At this point my sister comes up to me and asks who it is. I started to feel really anxious, and I called out to my neighbor a few times. It must have only been about 5 minutes, but it honestly felt like ages when she didn't reply. I was actually about to tell my sister to call the police, when eventually she told me that the man was gone. She came up to our flat and explained to us what went down. She said that she was walking to her flat after finishing work when she saw a man waiting by the buzzers. At first she assumed he was just someone who lived there, until he noticed her walking up. He asked for us by name, and if she could let him up to our flat. Obviously she asked him who he was, and he told her that he was our dad. Obviously she buzzed us and told us first, as our neighbor doesn't know us that well, and she doesn't know what our dad looks like at all. She said that because we were young, she didn't want to buzz in a strange man up to our flat. She said her mother instincts kicked in when she heard my hesitation to let him up. Apparently, after he heard me say that, he got really pushy with her and started trying to shove her out of the way. He kept on saying to her, "It's okay. I'm their dad. Just let me in. I'm not gonna do anything." She started arguing with him and asking him to tell her his name, but he refused. She told him that if I didn't feel comfortable letting him in, there was no way he was getting in. His reaction was to call her a bitch and then get in the car and drive away. This is the reason why I hesitated. We haven't spoken to our dad at all since I was 16. We even considered getting a restraining order from him at one point. He's not our biological father, but we were legally adopted by him when I was 9. He was physically and verbally abusive to our mom, and had started to do the same with me. It got to the point where we had to leave him in the middle of the night. After this, he became very controlling, and would secretly record us. He has a criminal record as well, and I believe he was convicted of manslaughter in the 80s. I have no idea of the backstory behind that, and honestly I don't even want to know. Like I said, we haven't heard from him since, so as soon as she said the word dad, I almost had a panic attack. I had asked her to describe him, but she said that because it was so dark out she couldn't really see him. We ended up staying with her, because my sister and I were very shaken up. I don't know whether to call the police or not. I also don't know if it's our dad or not, as it could easily be someone else. I appreciate any advice. Two years ago, when my autistic daughter had trouble sleeping at night, she was 1.5 at the time, I would toss her in a car seat and drive her around. It was one of the only ways she could fall asleep soundly, and I lived with my parents in a nice neighborhood. One night I'm driving, and my girl had finally fallen asleep. It was about 9 p.m. at this point. I was hungry and wanted to let her fall into a deeper sleep so I could move her. I got some food from a drive-thru and pull over onto a side street right next to the restaurant so I can eat. I'm finishing up eating and looking back to check on my kid when suddenly these super bright headlights pull up right behind me, a little too close. I wave apologetically. None of my windows are tinted, and I used to drive a Jeep Compass, so the back window was big enough for them to see me. I assumed whoever it was trying to park at the house I'm currently in front of. I pull away and start down the street. Once I'm at the end of the block and around the corner, I see the headlights again. No biggie. This is a semi-busy street, so people cut down this way all the time. Only this person is riding my ass like I'm not moving fast enough. I get annoyed and change lanes to get out of their way. Almost as soon as I do, though, they follow right behind. At this point, I realize that the car was the same sedan that had pulled up behind me on the last street. Now they're too close for me to see the make of their car, and the high beams are on so I can't see anything behind me. I curse myself for not paying better attention to the car before. I didn't want to be crazy paranoid, so I took some unnecessary side streets past my neighborhood. This person followed me behind, turn for turn and lane change for lane change. I panicked and called my dad. I know I should have called the police, but I was 21 and did the first thing I could think of. He was at work 30 minutes away. He had terrible reception and decided to call me back on the landline at his work. He was on his cell phone with the sheriff's department for our neighborhood, and they told me to drive down to the station. It had been close to 40 minutes since this person had started following me, and they kept riding closer and closer. I was running lights and swerving around at this point, just trying to catch someone's attention. I drive to the station, and no one is fucking there. Not one car. No cruisers, no one in the department office, not even any cars in the small parking lot. They wanted me to pull into the lot and wait for an officer to arrive. Now I'm alone. My 1-year-old is fussing in the back seat, and there's only one way out of the parking lot. I nope right the fuck past the station and tell my dad to tell the officer on the phone to fuck off because no one was there. I see a sheriff's car at the light ahead and start to honk and flash my lights as he drives across the intersection. He either misses what I'm doing, or he just decides to ignore it. It's now been over an hour, and the person has tapped my ass 4 times. Eventually, I saw another sheriff's car and laid onto the horn. I think he caught on because he busted a U-turn and came back towards us. Right as soon as he did, the car behind me disappeared into the mall across the street, and the officer followed. I was instructed to go back to the station and wait, so I did. Eventually, I was waiting so long I finally decided to go inside, triple locking the door of my car because I was so terrified. The office had no one except a non-emergency phone on the desk that only connected me to other extensions. To wrap the story up, they made me feel crazy and said they never even found the car, that all he could do was take a statement since nothing had even happened. He offered to follow me and my daughter home, only to drive away as soon as I parked while I was left to take my sleeping kid inside, shaking so hard I couldn't even unlock the door. I ran upstairs to my mom's room. She was on pain medication after surgical procedures and was asleep. I shook her awake, sobbing, and told her what happened. It took me 2 days to sleep again at night, and to this day I refuse to go on night drives with my daughter. This one is long. However, I feel I should mention most of my interactions with this guy to show how normal someone can appear and how little things can all add up. I've written and rewritten this so many times, and the fact I've not been able to post twice kind of makes me feel like it's a sign that maybe I shouldn't. But here we go anyways. I dated 2 guys at university. One, Nick, lasted a few months. The other, well, it was literally just 1 date. Before I begin, I must say that I was a little naive, shy, and riddled with anxiety. I mean, I knew enough about the world and wasn't sheltered or anything, but when it comes to male intentions towards me, I had low self-esteem and couldn't understand why anyone would be interested in me in that way. I assumed all guys were just being friendly. Anyway, this second guy, Dave, I met during my first year at university. He was nice enough. We met in a language class I had decided to take as an extra, and he smiled and chatted to me for a while. Honestly, now I think back, I do remember meeting him that day, but I soon forgot about him over the course of the year. One day, towards the end of the first year, he came up to me calling my name, which I was a bit surprised at, to be honest. We hadn't spoken much since the first class, and I didn't even remember his name. He asked me if we had any homework from another class, a class I didn't even know he was in. I remembered feeling a bit confused both that he knew my name and had seen me in a completely different class I hadn't even noticed him in, but I got over it and politely smiled. I said we didn't. We talked a bit about how we were going to spend our summers, and that was that. At the very end of the year, our class had a night out drinking, and he was there. My housemate, myself, he and his friend all went to a club afterwards. He proceeded to keep buying me drinks. I didn't really notice much, as he was also buying his friend drinks, but at one point I declined more, saying I didn't want any more. He still bought me a drink, which I drank so as to not appear rude. He dropped my housemate and I off at home, and probably not the best decision to get into a car with a guy who had been drinking, but I was young and stupid. We all said goodbye. At some point over that summer, I was abroad, and I remember randomly getting a Facebook request from him. There was nothing abnormal at this point about his Facebook. He seemed like a typical student doing student things. I accepted, and gradually he began to add all of my online accounts. During my second year, I dated Nick, and I didn't see Dave at all until the end of that year. By this time, I had broken up with the other guy, and Dave asked me to go see a movie with him. I accepted since he was a nice guy, and he picked me up. We saw the movie, and he dropped me off again. Nothing weird. I thanked him, and he left. We really only talked during the drive there and back, and I began to talk about where I grew up. Now that I think back, though, he never divulged any information about himself, other than that he had already been married once. I had honestly not realized he was much older than me. He had quite a young face, but he never divulged his real age. It wasn't until much later I found this information out. The next night he invited me over to his place. However, I declined, telling him that honestly I didn't think there could be anything more than friendship between us. He seemed to be fine with this, and we went back to being friends. This is where things start to get weird. At the end of the final year, I was due to turn 21. We were having a big party back in my hometown. I invited him along with some more of my friends from university. He contacted me and apologized, since he wouldn't be able to make it. He offered to take me out to dinner that evening as an early birthday present. I accepted. We went out, ate, and he offered to walk me home. All the way home, he kept commenting that I lived way out of town. It was a 30-minute walk to university, and 20 minutes into the city, which isn't that long at all. I told him this, but he just kept commenting about how far from campus I lived. The house my 3 housemates and I lived in was in a suburban area, and not exactly rural or anything. I was confused by this. He really made it seem like I lived miles away. Eventually we got there, and me, being my typical naive self, invited him in. I felt bad he had walked out of his way to walk me home. 2 of my roommates were in bed, but 1 was still up watching TV. The 3 of us chatted for a while before it started to get later and later. My friend and I started dropping hints for him to leave, but he just wouldn't. We said we were tired and he would just keep talking, somehow always moving the conversation towards sex. It must have been about 3 or 4 a.m. before my housemate, who was a lot bolder than me, finally stood up and told him we were going to bed. He had to leave. For years, we thought he just didn't get the hints and was extremely dense, but that was only until a few months ago. Fast forward, and I haven't spoken to him in years. At some point, he blocked me on Facebook because we got into a heated debate about politics around 3 years ago. A few months ago, a friend sent me a news article with the comment, "Hey, didn't this guy go to university with us?" Sure enough, there was a picture of Dave. The article? It's about how he was on trial, accused of raping multiple women around the time I knew him at university. It also stated that he was almost twice the age of the students at that university at the time. A mature student, and the judge had branded him as a dangerous man. Looking back that night, he was reluctant to leave, and that suddenly made a lot more sense. I'll forever be thankful to my housemate for not leaving me alone with him in our living room. I'm selfishly happy I never had the experience those girls did, but my heart goes out to them. I don't know the outcome of the trial, but little things, the hanging around, the constant attempts to turn conversations sexual, the secrecy about himself, buying drinks after I had already declined, it all points to the same thing in my mind. Suddenly then, I noticed that he still followed me on Twitter. Out of morbid curiosity, I decided to take a look. It hadn't been used for a long time, but there was a link to another account he had, one that sickened me. It contained incoherent ramblings about how women were terrible, getting more and more aggressive with each tweet. It quite frankly made me feel sick. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. As always, be sure to let me know what you guys think, and please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. I know some people have also had some problems about videos not appearing in their sub box, so please make sure to hit that little bell if you guys want to always be notified of when my next video comes out. As always, links to all of my social media will be in the description of the video below. You can find links to my Twitter, Gmail, Twitch, and Facebook accounts. So if you guys ever want to talk to me, just go ahead and shoot me a message on any of those, and I'll try to respond to your message as soon as possible. I'm also going to start trying to stream on Twitch a little bit more, so if you guys have notifications on there, you'll be notified right away when I go live. I might also try to do some on YouTube, but I haven't decided yet. I'm still kind of trying to decide what kind of streams I want to do. Anyways, if you guys have a story you would like to send in, or if you have a story you would like to suggest that I read, go ahead and send me a message on any of those links in the description below. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the title, how you would like to be credited, and any genres that the story might have, if it does have one. If you guys are curious about the music used in this video, go ahead and take a look in the description below as well. I always put all of the music in the order in which it appears in the video, and I also have links to the artists as well. Last but not least, I also have a Patreon if you guys feel like you want to contribute to the channel a little bit. But of course, as always, it is never required and you will never have to pay for watching any of my videos. So that's just something you do if you feel like it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and please be sure to leave your feedback in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you very much.